What's going on, guys? Hope everyone is well, and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So, this episode, I'm going to jump into setting up a beginner's diet. The reason being is I think a lot of people overcomplicate and struggle with nutrition. So, I just thought I'd give my view on what a beginner diet should look like, a couple ways you can consider setting it up, and depending on what will work best for you and what your goals are. As a whole, with your nutrition, what you should focus on is building small sustainable habits rather than following the perfect diet, because trying to follow the perfect diet will probably lead to just failing and dropping off your diet and a lack of adherence, or in other words, sticking to your diet. The reason why is if your diet's absolutely perfect, quote unquote perfect, and you're not having foods that are quote unquote bad, you're not having foods you enjoy, then you're probably not going to stick to it long term. So the best diet you can have is the one that you can stick to. The compliance is the science when it comes to a diet. So always make sure whatever you're doing, regardless how effective it is or how optimal the diet is, just make sure it's sustainable, because the more sustainable it is, the better your diet is. Simple as that. So that's what you have to be concerned about. Obviously, a diet that's rich in whole foods, a lot of nutrient dense foods and protein's going to be better than a diet that has a lot of chocolate and a lack of protein in it and a lack of nutritious foods. But the main thing's having something you can be consistent with. So that's what you should prioritize. So, first of all, there's three approaches you could have with your diet. So the first one is intuitive eating, which is basically what most individuals do, is eating just to their hunger levels, which isn't a bad idea, because your hunger levels are there for a reason. Your body wants to sit at a calorie maintenance, which basically means just not gain or lose weight, just eat to fill your hunger and satiety levels. So that's not a bad idea at all. The problem with that is if people eat a lot of fast food, it's not filling at all. And that's why people usually gain weight, in my opinion, because there's this there's a lot of fast food people eat nowadays, like McDonald's, for example. It's so easy to just swallow a cheeseburger. It just dissolves in your mouth and you're never full after it. Well, I never am. Whereas if you got, let's say if you've got the 800 calories that you'd have from a large Big Mac meal and had a lot of like whole protein from like chicken, let's say you had a lot of vegetables on your plate and some rice, then you'd probably be a lot more fuller. Which is why people gain weight, because like McDonald's doesn't fill them, so they eat an excess of calories, causing them to gain weight. So that's one of the wee downfalls of intuitive eating. But if you're just getting started in your fitness journey, or you're just trying to take better care of your health, it isn't the worst idea. So like I said, what intuitive eating is just eating to your hunger levels. And how you can make this into a diet is just by simply being mindful about choosing what foods you're eating. For example, you don't have to track your food during, like, if you're just eating intuitively, but just being mindful of eating more protein and considering, let's say, eating 3 meals a day with a decent amount of protein in it, and that will get you pretty far. You don't have to, if you're not extremely serious about the gym or have some extremely big goals, you don't have to follow a strict diet 7 days a week. There's no reason why you should. So you could just eat intuitively, and just focus on doing simple wee things to make sure your diet's effective, like having protein 3 times a day, having your 5 a day, and just having a decent amount of water in your diet. That can be enough to have an effective diet. And just focusing on having the majority of your food from relatively healthy things. And then obviously you can be a bit flexible with it, obviously have what you want on the weekend, but that's a good approach to have. And something that I recommend if you aren't wanting to track your food, just to eat intuitively. Like I said, have some sort of structure with your diet, make some small sustainable habits, like I said earlier. And then next thing I want to touch on is if it fits your macros. So this is basically doing something which is called just eating to fit your protein, fats and carbohydrates, which are the three macronutrients in your diet. So I'm not gonna dive too deep into it to confuse people, but I don't think beginners need to worry about how much carbohydrates or fat they're eating. If you're a beginner, what I think you should do is just be mindful about having enough protein. And if you're wanting to eat a if it fits your macros approach, what this will simply involve is just choosing what foods you eat on a daily basis, eating different foods on a daily basis, but making it fit how much protein you want and how much calories you want. I think that's the route forward if you're a beginner. I don't think there's any need to worry about your carbohydrates or fats, and it doesn't make that much of a difference. As if you're eating a balanced diet, you'll probably have enough fats and you'll probably have enough carbohydrates. It will just work out pretty equal and a pretty decent amount. So if you're wanting to follow it, if it fits your macros approach, I'm going to dive into how to actually know how much calories you should be eating and how much protein you should be eating. So as far as protein, a good rough ballpark to follow is eating 2 grams per kilograms of body weight. So that means if you weigh 60 kilos, you should eat something like 120 kilos of protein. Had to test my maths there. So the reason being is protein's got a lot of benefits to it, having an adequate amount for muscle growth and repair. So that's important if you're looking to diet or if you're looking to put on muscle. Because the more muscle you have when you diet, the more energy you will expend. Simple as that. Which is why you see like big bodybuilders eating a ton of food when they're dieting, whereas let's say like smaller females won't be able to because they've got much more muscle mass. Simple as that. And additionally, protein also helps curb hunger and your satiety. So it just basically helps fill you up. Simple as that, as well as having a lot more benefits. So the reason why you want to have protein to fill you up if you're dieting is because obviously it'll help you stick to your diet, and when you're like bulking or trying to gain muscle, protein helps growth and repair. So regardless if it fills you up, it's important to have a decent amount. If you are really full, you can't get your calories in, you could lower your protein, but I don't think that's something I need to dive into now for beginners anyway. And the rest of your calories, apart from protein, you'll get from carbs and fats, if I said, or additionally extra protein. But you just want to make sure you're having some fats and carbs in your diet. Right, so off that tangent, how do you actually work out how much calories you could consume? So the way I like to do it, and the way I suggest, is just tracking what you eat on a daily basis on MyFitnessPal. So if those who don't know, MyFitnessPal is an extremely popular fitness tracking app where you can just track how much calories you're eating through the 3 macronutrients, which are protein, fats and carbs. And yeah, this allows you just, like I said, see your calories. So what I recommend is doing this for a week, so 7 days, and just tracking everything you eat across the week. Don't make changes to what you eat because you know you're tracking it. Just eat how you usually would, regardless how bad or good it is, and log it into MyFitnessPal. And then obviously when you track it for 7 days, you'll have 7 readings of how much calories you're eating. It might differ on the weekend from going out, eating food, etc., which is perfectly fine, because what we're wanting from this is an average. So you want to track your food on MyFitnessPal for a week, like I said, and find out what your average is from the 7 days. So obviously you'll add up all 7 days, divide it by 7, and you'll get an accurate figure. Also, while you're doing this, I recommend weighing yourself. So it doesn't have to be every day. Although your weight fluctuates, it can be beneficial to weigh yourself every day. But if you're not too keen on the thought of obsessing over scale weight, weighing yourself all the time, you could just do it 2 to 3 times a week. You could do it once a week, but the problem with that is your scale weight can fluctuate a lot, so it might give you an accurate reading. So what I'd recommend you do is weigh yourself at the start of the week, the middle of the week, and end of the week. And when you eat your diet, see what your weight's doing. Your weight will probably just be at maintenance. Some people won't. but for the most individuals, it will be a rough maintenance. So let's say that you have you added your calories up for the week and you ended up eating, let's say, 2,100 calories a day. And from this, you will either add calories or take them away, depending on what your goal is. So let's say your goal is to lose weight and you're on 2,100 calories. I wouldn't overcomplicate this. I'd just recommend taking away 200 calories if you're not losing weight, and then eating 200 less calories. And what you should do is just weigh yourself, like I said, maybe 3 times a week, 2 times a week if you can't be bothered with 3, and see what your weight does for the following week. And if your weight goes down, just keep eating the same amount of food. If your weight doesn't change it at all, take away some calories. If you gain weight, obviously take away calories if you're trying to lose weight. Simple as that. So I'd just go 200 calories at a time. I appreciate that might be quite a lot to get your head round. So if anyone's got any issues with working it out or is confused about what I said, just give me a message and drop me, and I will be more than happy to help them work out how much calories they may want to be eating throughout a week or that. But the opposite applies if you want to bulk. So let's say your average calories for a week again was 2,100. You didn't gain or lose weight throughout the week, then you'd want to bump your calories up to, let's say, 2,200 or 2,300. And if you start gaining weight slowly, decent, don't change anything if it's not broken. If you start gaining too much weight, take some calories off. If you don't gain enough, add more calories, simple as that. So a good analogy is it's like a fire, your body weight. If you want the fire to get bigger, or in other words, if you want to gain weight, you need to add fuel to the fire, fuel being calories. If you want to lose weight, you need to take fuel away from the fire so it gets smaller. So stop putting wood in the fire or eat less calories, in other words. And like I said, just figure out how much calories you should be eating and make sure you're eating enough protein. And that's all you have to really worry about. You don't have to worry about your carbs and fats. It's not really important at all, really. You just want to make sure you're not eating a really, really low amount of fat. So ideally nothing below 0.3 grams of fat per kilogram of body weight. So the reason being is fat has important roles like nutrient absorption, and it's just beneficial for our overall health. We need fat in our diet to function effectively as a human, simple as that. Carbohydrates, you don't really have to worry about how much you have. Just having as much as you can with your calories, just don't really worry about it. As long as your fat's not too low, then you're sorted. So in terms of what foods you should be eating in your diet, so again, there's no magic foods. There's not any magic foods you need to lose weight, gain weight. What matters is how much calories you're consuming, like I just went over there. So what I'd recommend, regardless of your goal, is focus on eating mostly healthy foods in your diet. So it doesn't take a genius to know what foods are healthy. So use your initiative. Everyone knows an apple's relatively healthy. A chocolate bar, probably not so healthy. So you'll get much more nutrients in an apple than you will in a bit of chocolate. So just focus on fueling your body with healthy foods in your diet on a daily basis, and make sure they're digesting okay, so you're not having any digestive issues from the foods you're consuming. And that's all you really have to worry about with what foods you eat in your diet. So just doing that, having your 5 a day and making sure your protein's decent. And as for having a meal plan, that's basically not too different from an if it fits your macros approach, but obviously it's a lot more structured. You'll be eating the same foods daily, so this can be beneficial as it saves you planning out your foods every day. So I follow a meal plan, however the foods I have I enjoy, so I don't mind sticking to it. I have a off-plan meal, or in other words a meal I simply track using my leftover calories and just have whatever I want. If it's a burger, which it usually is, I'm a sucker for a burger, or whatever I fancy, I'll have it. I'll just make sure I try and hit my protein on the day and my calories are accurate. And I think this is totally fine, especially if you're on a meal plan the other 6 or 5 days of the week. And yeah, so a meal plan, it's like a structured what you eat every meal every day. So probably not necessary if you're just starting out in your fitness journey, but if you're wanting to take your obviously training, nutrition much more seriously, then it can be beneficial. But the downfalls of it do include that if you're on a meal plan, if you're missing out, let's say you're not having any milk or other foods high in calcium on a daily basis, then you're never going to consume foods with calcium on a daily basis. So that can be a big issue with it. So if you're missing out a nutrient, then you're never going to consume it. So that means you can have deficiencies in your diet. And also not everyone will be able to stick to it. And yeah, so that's another issue with it. But again, it's not necessary. Like I said, it's all about having small sustainable habits to your diet. So if small sustainable habits only means you can consume 3 servings of protein a day and have 5 bits of fruit, if you can do that consistently, magic, that's better than nothing. That's better than just mindlessly eating throughout the day. So just focus on having structure with nutrition, and it will get you a lot further than not having structure with it, regardless of how much structure it is. And yeah, so as well as having your 5 a day in your diet, what's also important is salt in your meals. So salt in your meals is really important, as we get electrolytes from salt, which play a big part in our hydration. So we don't just have to consume water to stay hydrated on a daily basis. We need to also have our 5 a day. No, sorry, not have our 5 a day salt in meals, so we get electrolytes in, because when we sweat, we expend electrolytes, we pee them out, etc. So just salt your meals to taste. That's all you really have to do. I have 3 grams of salt per meal. Might sound a lot, but my meals are pretty big, so it's not really a problem. But yeah, so that's what I recommend doing. And as far as how much food or meals you should consume in a day, there's no right or wrong answer to this. And what I'd recommend is anywhere from 3 to 6. So that's probably going to be the sweet spot for most people. The reason being is either end of the spectrum isn't sustainable. So if you're dieting and you're only eating 2 meals a day, you're going to be absolutely starving for the whole day if you only eat breakfast and then dinner. On the other hand, if you eat 7 meals a day and you only get 1 break at work, you are busy away from work, then how are you going to fit in 7 meals a day? So just anywhere from 3 to 6 probably a good idea. So just whatever you can stick to, choose that. It doesn't have to be 6. It doesn't have to be any magic number. Just have something you can stick to. I can't emphasize that enough. And that will just help you stick to your diet long term. Simple as that. So yeah, as far as what I think's best is just anywhere from 4 to 6 to help spike muscle protein synthesis. So that simply helps the growth and repair of your muscles. I'm not going to dive into that too much today, because I want to keep it quite simple in terms of how to set up a beginner's diet. But something else to consider is water intake. So with my water intake, what I like to do is I like to be quite structured with it, because then I'll definitely be hydrated going into each session if I'm having a certain amount each day. But that doesn't have to be the case for yourself. What you could do is you could just drink to your thirst levels. And what I mean by this is just drink enough to quench your thirst and you'll probably be alright. So and a good way to tell if you're drinking enough water is what your pee looks like. So if it's extremely dark, if it looks like Coke, then you're probably not drinking enough water. Whereas if it's somewhat clear, then you're probably sorted. So it doesn't have to look like tap water. It doesn't have to be completely clear. You want a good middle ground between obviously not being extremely dark. So anything with a wee tint of yellow, sorry for getting into the wee details, but that's perfectly fine as well. So I just want a quick recap. So focus mainly on developing small sustainable habits and a good structure with your eating. And it's up to you what approach you want to follow. You can eat intuitively if you're not that, I wouldn't say not that dedicated, not that you don't want to put a lot of time into your diet, or you don't really want to have the hassle of tracking your diet, which is completely fine, and intuitive eating might be a good approach. If you want to be a bit more structured with your diet and be a bit more accurate with it, and you're taking the gym a bit more seriously, then you could follow a if it fits your macros approach. But with if it fits your macros approach, that doesn't mean eating Skittles for breakfast, shit like that. It just simply means having the freedom of choosing what foods you want on a daily basis and not being limited to like a strict structure. But again, it's still important to have enough protein, have enough fruit, all those wee things. And if you don't want the hassle of tracking your food on a daily basis because it can be stressful, then you could follow a meal plan. And also have enough protein, so 2 grams of protein per kilogram, have your 5 a day, salt your meals, have 3 to 6 meals a day, and that's about it. So nothing else to really ramble on about. There's not really much point in going over how much calcium you should have, how much vitamin C you should have, because it's not sustainable. So just focus on having small sustainable habits and it will get you really far. So thank you very much if you made it to the end and you enjoyed this podcast. Let me know if you took something from this podcast, and also if you want to see any more episodes on certain topics, I'll be more than happy to consider making them. That's if I believe I can actually bring value to them, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to talk about something I'm not educated on or I don't believe would be beneficial. So yeah, obviously just let me know if you'd like to see anything. I'll be more than happy to consider it. And thank you for listening. Much appreciated. Cheers.